Right now, you have a to-do list. Maybe it is in your phone. Maybe it is scrawled on a sticky note on your desk. Maybe it only exists in your head, a low hum of obligations that never quite goes quiet. Emails, deadlines, meetings, a calendar that owns more of your time than you do, and somewhere underneath all of it, a quiet thought you have probably had more than once: what would it feel like to just stop? But here is the strange part. That feeling is not laziness. It is not weakness. It is not a character flaw. It is memory. Ancient biological memory built into your nervous system by ancestors who lived in a completely different world. Because for nearly all of human history, your ancestors did not have jobs. Not even close. And what they did instead reveals something about your own mind that most people never stop long enough to consider. Go back about 300,000 years. Your ancestor is standing in open air somewhere in East Africa. The morning is cool. There is no boss waiting on a report. There is no rent due at the end of the month. There is no alarm clock, no commute, no performance review. The entire modern economy does not exist. Neither does money or agriculture or any of the vast systems that now organize nearly every hour of your waking life. He has food to find. That is it. So what does he actually do with his day? The answer, according to anthropologist Marshall Salins, would surprise almost anyone raised in the modern world. In his landmark 1966 essay, Salins argued that hunter-gatherer men were not desperate, exhausted survivors endlessly clawing at the earth just to stay alive. He gave them a different name entirely. He called them the original affluent society, not because they had a great deal of material wealth, but because they wanted very little, and what they needed, the land consistently gave them. Salins estimated that many hunter-gatherer groups spent as few as 3 to 5 hours a day acquiring food. The rest of the time was entirely their own. 3 to 5 hours. Let that number sit for a moment. Researchers who have studied modern hunter-gatherer groups, the closest living mirrors to your prehistoric ancestors, have arrived at remarkably similar conclusions. Anthropologist Richard Lee spent years living alongside the Datkung San people of the Kalahari Desert beginning in the 1960s. He did not theorize from a distance. He tracked exactly how they spent their days, hour by hour. Adult men hunted for roughly 2 to 3 days per week. Then they stopped. They did not hunt on the 4th day simply because they could. They did not stockpile obsessively. They did not fill every available hour with labor. When the food was secured, the work was finished, and the rest of the day opened up like a field. So what happened after the work was done? They talked, and this is not a small or trivial thing. Conversation was the original technology. Around the fire at night, in the shade of a broad tree at midday, sitting in loose groups of 10 or 15 people, your ancestor talked for hours. Sometimes about practical things. Sometimes about nothing practical at all. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar has argued compellingly that human language itself may have evolved not primarily to coordinate hunting strategies, but to maintain and repair social bonds within groups. The same way other primates groom each other physically to build trust and reinforce hierarchy, early humans used speech as a form of social grooming, gossip, storytelling, laughter at something that happened 3 days ago. Every conversation you have with another person is, at some deep level, an ancient ritual your brain already knows how to perform. They played, not children. Men, adults. And this is something the modern world has quietly convinced you to feel guilty about. Your ancestor had no such guilt. Games, foot races, mock wrestling, competitions involving thrown objects, all of it appears consistently in the ethnographic record across dozens of pre-agricultural cultures on every inhabited continent. Play was not frivolous. It sharpened reflexes and physical skill. It built alliances between men who might need to trust each other completely in a dangerous moment. It was pleasurable in a way that had real survival value, because groups that played together stayed together, and groups that stayed together survived things that isolated individuals could not. The men who laughed together in the afternoon were the same men who fought beside each other when the moment required it. They made things. Not for trade. Not for sale. Not to build a brand. But because the human brain has a deep, almost physical craving to shape raw material into something that did not exist before. Carvings, ochre patterns pressed onto rock and skin, musical instruments carved from bone. Some of the oldest, deliberately crafted objects ever recovered by archaeologists are not weapons. They are not farming tools. They are beads, tiny perforated shells, strung together and worn against the body as decoration. Researchers have found shell beads in Morocco dated to over 130,000 years ago. Your ancestor decorated himself, made art, created objects of no practical survival function, long before he built a permanent shelter or planted a single seed. The desire to make something beautiful is not a modern indulgence. It is among the oldest known human impulses. They rested. Real, extended, unapologetic rest, taken without guilt and without a productivity app telling them how many minutes they had left. Sleep researcher Jerome Siegel studied 3 pre-industrial hunter-gatherer groups on separate continents, tracking their actual sleep patterns over time. He found that they slept an average of 6 to 7 hours per night and followed natural light cycles closely, waking with dawn and settling with dark. They also took short rests during the day when the body asked for them. More importantly, they did not experience the chronic low-grade sleep deprivation that has become so normalized in the modern world that most people no longer recognize it as a problem. Rest was not a reward granted after sufficient productivity. It was simply part of the rhythm of being alive. They wandered, not aimlessly, with curiosity and deep attention. Your ancestor explored his landscape in ways that served no immediate, calculable purpose. He tracked animals he had no intention of killing that day, just to understand them better. He climbed ridges to see what the land looked like from above. He sat beside rivers and watched them for no particular reason. Over years and decades of this kind of attentive wandering, he built something that modern researchers call ecological knowledge, and it was staggering in its depth and breadth. Studies of contemporary hunter-gatherer groups found that adult men typically hold detailed knowledge of hundreds of plant species, dozens of animal species, seasonal cycles, and territories spanning thousands of square kilometers. None of it was written down. It lived inside them, built slowly through patient curiosity over a lifetime. Now here is the part that reframes everything. Around 10,000 years ago, agriculture arrived. The Neolithic Revolution. Humans in multiple regions of the world began planting crops, domesticating animals, and building permanent settlements. The standard story taught about this transition is that it was straightforward progress. Humans got smarter, adapted, and life improved. But the bones tell a different story entirely. Bioarchaeologist Clark Spencer Larson has spent decades analyzing skeletal remains from early agricultural populations and comparing them directly to their hunter-gatherer predecessors. The findings are uncomfortable. Early farmers were measurably shorter. Their bones carried more evidence of chronic disease, infection, and nutritional deficiency. They showed clear signs of repetitive physical stress from performing the same motions day after day. They worked significantly harder and ate a far narrower, less varied diet than the hunter-gatherers who came before them. The shift to agriculture gave human populations more stability and the ability to grow in number. But for the individual human body, it was not an upgrade. It was an exchange. More food security and population density, paid for with more labor, more disease, more repetition, and dramatically less freedom over how a day was spent. Your ancestor did not choose the grind. The grind chose him, and then it chose every generation after him, right down to you. Here you are now, living inside a system built from 10,000 years of accumulated obligation. You have a job. Your job has a schedule. Your schedule has almost no room in it for the things your brain was literally shaped by evolution to do. To talk slowly and without agenda. To play without a measurable outcome. To make something with your hands that no one will pay you for. To rest without earning the right to it first. To wander through the world with open, unhurried attention. And when you try to take any of that time back, something in you resists. A voice tells you it is wasted, that you should be doing something, that this is not what responsible people do. That voice is not wisdom. It is agriculture. It is 10,000 years of a system that needed you to stay productive and learn to make you feel guilty when you were not. The research is clear on this. Your longing for long conversations that go nowhere useful is not a sign of distraction. Your urge to make something with your hands, even when it earns you nothing, is not a hobby you have not found time for. Your desire to sit outside, do nothing, and simply exist in a landscape while the light changes slowly overhead is not laziness. These impulses are tens of thousands of years old. They are woven into the architecture of your nervous system by ancestors who understood, without any theory or study, that a human being requires more than productivity to remain whole. Right now, you have a to-do list. Maybe it is in your phone. Maybe it is in your head. And somewhere underneath it, that quiet thought is still waiting. What would it feel like to just stop? Your ancestors knew exactly what that felt like. They did it every single afternoon.